surprised. I hadn't expected to see anybody here this evening because I have been studying what Scottish politicians say, studying what the mainstream media say, studying what the BBC say, including that distinguished Scot, Andrew Marr. And I'd been led to believe, no, I really had been led to believe there wasn't a single Brexiteer in Scotland, so I'm amazed to see you. Because that is how it's portrayed. Now, in Westminster, when we talk about the UK as a whole, we're constantly told the 48% must be listened to. The views of the 48% must be taken into account. But when it comes to Scotland, it would seem that the views of 1 million people, the views of nearly 40%, are to be treated with complete and utter contempt, and the Brexit Party is here to put an end to that. We launched this party 5 weeks ago today in a factory in Coventry. And I have to say, what we've managed to achieve in those 5 weeks has even exceeded my most optimistic expectation. And here in Scotland, I think the political class are stunned and terrified by those YouGov opinion polls that you might have seen this morning. Because what they show is that our capable team, give them a hand please, what the polls show is that our capable team are now in second position ahead of all the others apart from the SNP, and we've done it in 5 weeks. We've got them on the run. We've got them genuinely scared. And the Labour and Tory votes appear to be almost disappearing, as they should. Because look, in that referendum, we had all the big parties telling us to vote Remain. All the big business figures telling us to vote Remain. All the big trade union leaders telling us to Remain. Much of the media telling us to Remain. The official government leaflet that came through every door. Do you remember that from Cameron? In fact, do you remember David Cameron? 9.4 million quid of our money spent putting that propaganda leaflet through our door when it was supposed to be a neutral thing. How I enjoyed walking up Downing Street and posting it back through his letterbox. I really did enjoy that. But there was one thing in that leaflet that I thought was rather important, because it said, whatever you decide, it will be implemented. And we then had, the next year, a general election, where across the UK, nearly 85% of people voted for Labour and Conservative parties, both of whom promised in their manifesto that they would honour the result of the referendum. And then we had 500 MPs voting for Article 50, which put into British law that we would leave the European Union on March 29. Thank you, thank you. Someone's awake, thank God for that. That we would leave the EU on March the 29th with or without. Thank you. Oh, they're with it now, Mr. Chairman. And when you think about all those promises, when you think about all those reassurances, we didn't leave on March the 29th. We didn't leave, as Mrs. May promised us, on the 12th of April. We haven't left by the 30th of June, and now we're told it'll be fine because we're going to leave on the 31st of October. Halloween. Trick or treaty. The truth of it is, if we continue to rely on those parties and this government in Westminster, we will never, ever get a meaningful Brexit. We will never be fully free of EU laws. We will never get back the 200 miles off the coast here in Scotland that should be our exclusive economic fishing zone. We will never get those things if we continue to trust this political class. It is not too strong to say that we have been openly and willfully betrayed by our political class. And I, having spent 25 years of my life campaigning, standing in election after election, wondering at times whether I might go down in history as the patron saint of lost causes. But I kept on going. I kept on going. And I did it because so strong was my belief that it is the democratic nation state that is the right building block within which I wanted to live. I did it because I believe in the people of our great country. I did it unashamedly because I'm patriotic and think we are a great nation. It's just that we're very badly led, it seems to me. And I see Brexit as a fantastic opportunity, a rebirth of the democratic process in our country, an opportunity to reform and modernise, to have a political revolution so that Parliament starts to reflect the will of the people, an opportunity to reach out and start to forge new and better relationships with other parts of the world. We're obsessed with Europe. We're obsessed with Europe. And Europe is not helping us in a 21st century world. Europe is hindering us in a 21st century world. And it seems to me that with Brexit, we can reach out and forge new alliances and friendships with people out there in the world that in many ways we're very close to. And I think a better, closer relationship with the 2.4 billion people that live in the Commonwealth would be a very good thing for us to do. So there's no way. I thought, I'm not going to stand aside. I'm not going to be rolled over. I'm not going to see Brexit betrayed without fighting back. That is why I founded the Brexit Party. That is why these candidates are here to help me. And I want to know, are you going to help us fight back? Good. And do you agree with me that our politics is full of deception? Because here in Scotland, we have the extraordinary situation where Nicola Sturgeon talks about independence. She says that separating from the United Kingdom but staying part of the European Union means that Scotland will be independent. And it is, I think, the most dishonest political discourse I've ever seen anywhere in the world. You cannot be independent if you're governed from the European Court of Justice. You cannot be independent if you're in the EU's customs union and single market. You cannot be independent if you're governed by Monsieur Barnier and Mr. Juncker. You can't be independent. And I think this myth needs to be exposed. There are maybe as many as 30% of SNP voters that do not want to be part of the European Union. And I would say to those voters, even though I'm very much a unionist, but I would say to those voters, unless we get Brexit, you cannot really have an intelligent debate about Scotland's future. And actually, what you ought to do, folks, in this election, if you're genuinely a nationalist, is desert the SNP, lend your vote to the Brexit Party, let's get out of the European Union, and then have an honest debate about the future of Scotland and the rest of us. It has been my great privilege to be back here in Edinburgh today. I notice that the howling mob outside is considerably smaller than it was when I was last here a few years ago. Well, no, I mean, quite honestly, if that's the best protest they can mount, I'm pretty disappointed. But you know, can you imagine any of us turning up to a meeting of Euro-federalists or the SNP? Can you imagine any of us screaming abuse at their delegates as they arrived? Can you imagine us trying to stop democratic debate taking place? Do you know, the other night in Merthyr Tydfil, we had Plaid Cymru lying in the road, trying to stop our delegates attending that meeting. And if you think about it, it gets to the very heart of what is really happening in the United Kingdom today. There is a ruling class of politicians and political parties who genuinely believe that they know better what's good for us than we do in our own judgments. When they say that we didn't know what we voted for in the referendum, what they mean is we're frankly too stupid, too ignorant to have been given that choice in the first place. Can you imagine, 3 years on, with the referendum not delivered, can you imagine if in an African country an election had simply been overturned? There would be uproar. Many of those in the liberal elite would now be having a fit of the vapors. They'd be demanding the United Nations be sent in. And yet, it is the arrogance of those elites that now has stopped Brexit from happening. And the reason we do not behave like they do, the reason we would never behave like they do, the reason why I'd never ever have anybody in the Brexit Party speaking or behaving in that manner is because we believe that those generations that went before us made a massive sacrifice for us to be free people. And we are the party of democracy. We are the party of liberty, the party of the nation. Thank you. I haven't got to, oh, you're going to do the questions and I'm going to sit here.
Wow. Well, thank you very much for that, Nigel.
Oh, thank you.
Give him another hand. Okay, so we've got a few questions from the audience here this evening that I'd like to ask to Nigel and the panel. So the first one here is from David, and he asks, Nigel, what do you think of the BBC's bias?
Well, do you know what? We can watch ITV, we can listen to commercial radio, we can make our own choices on that thing. The fact is that the £150 a year for the BBC licence fee is effectively a tax on all of us, and their job is to provide public service broadcasting. And I'd be the first to say that there are things that the BBC does well. And I'd also say that around the rest of the world, those three letters, BBC, are synonymous with this country and synonymous with much that is good in this country. So there are some good things about the BBC. Just thought I'd throw that in before I really get started. I'm afraid, since the referendum, the BBC's coverage of this issue has been an absolute disgrace every week. Every week. Every week on Question Time, nearly every week that goes by, it's 4 Remainers and 1 Leaver. How can that be right in a country that voted by majority to leave? And I, you know... So, 12th of April, the Brexit Party launched. Within 3 weeks, well actually within 1 week, we were up at about 25% of the opinion polls. The most astonishing meteoric rise for a new party. Within 3 weeks, we were actually leading in the opinion polls. And it wasn't until last week that any of us from the Brexit Party appeared on any major BBC programme. I finally got on to Question Time, but even getting on that was a struggle. And then I appear on Sunday morning for the one-to-one interview with Andrew Marr. I was asked nothing about the foundation of the party, nothing about why we'd succeeded, nothing about the fact that some people think our branding, our videos are really rather professional and quite good and better than everybody else. Nothing. Nothing about our candidates, nothing about the election, just a series of quotes and half quotes dug up from things I'd said years before in a willful attempt to try and do me down. And I just decided I've had enough of this, so I started to call him out, and I'm very pleased I did.
We're pleased you did too, Nigel. Okay, our next question here is from Gracie. Have we got Gracie in here? Okay, so she would like to know, how can we knock the SNP out of Scotland? That's to you, Nigel.
Well, look, you know, I mean, the rise of the SNP has been extraordinary. Alex Salmond was a very, very effective public communicator. Let nobody be in any doubt about that. I think his economics of what the oil might do for Scotland was somewhat flawed. but he was a very effective politician. The SNP are not going to disappear from Scottish politics. They've kind of replaced the Labour Party.